Is Futebol Clube do Porto dumb? Futebol Clube do Porto, one of the biggest clubs in Portugal, just went through one of its worst seasons ever. They got third in Portugal, they got eliminated from the Europa League, they didn't got close to win the Portuguese Cup or the Portuguese League Cup, and they got last in their group of the Club World Cup. And they went through a lot of changes in their presidency. Their old president not only got removed, then later on died. Jorge Nuno Pinto Costa, an historical figure of the club, died, and the new president, André Vilas Boas, seemed like he was doing a good job. He was able to put the finances on a good run, and he brought a new coach because the old coach, Vitor Bruno, he wasn't doing bad tactically, but he kind of lost the locker room. He was being very silly with some of the players. For an example, with Pepe, which he punished Pepe because Pepe shot too hard into a mini goal used in practice. And like when you start to show to your players that they can't really respect you, it's the end of the road for you as a manager. And then the president brought Martin Anselmi, which I really enjoy, I really like as a coach. Martin Anselmi had a rough start. He didn't really knew what tactics he should use, and it doesn't seem like he knew until the Club World Cup, where he was using sometimes three central backs, sometimes playing in a 4-4-3. He was bringing some mobility and variation to the lineup of Porto, but apparently Martin Anselmi will be sacked, and there will be a new manager coming in, Fagioli, which is or was the manager of Ajax. Now the problem is with Porto is I think it's not a wise decision to let Anselmi go right now. Reason number one, he's only at the job for 5 months. Yes, he didn't have great results, but he also didn't have like super bad results if you think about it. He still finished third. Benfica and Sporting were too strong, and not only Porto lost their president, lost their manager, they also lost important players like Galeno and Nico Gonzalez, and nothing came in to replace those lost players. So first, it's unfair to Martin Anselmi to not give him good tools and then let him go. And now, what will Porto do? The new coach comes in, and they will not give them the right tools, they will not give them new players, and if they do, well, why didn't they give also those good players to Anselmi before letting him go? Because I believe that Anselmi will be developing good football at Futebol Clube do Porto, but now letting him go after the Club World Cup, where you have less time to prepare your team for the next season, just seems very unwise to me. And I don't know about Fagioli, I don't know if he'll be good or bad for Porto. What I know is if you don't give him the right tools, he will not be good. And then you will let him go again, then bring a new coach. Like there was already many clubs that went through this route. The coach roulette, Sporting before Ruben Amorim was kind of like that. They weren't able to keep sometimes during their era, early 20s until the early 2020s, they sometimes had those runs where they couldn't keep a manager on the job. They would buy bad players and then blame it on the coach. And yes, they had some bad coaches, but we've seen a lot of clubs going through this. Come one coach, comes another coach, not giving time for the coach to settle in. And I think Porto should really learn with Sporting because Ruben Amorim, in 1 year, he got fourth with Sporting, not third. Like Porto, they got fourth. And what Sporting did, they believed in the manager, they believed in the project, they brought the right players, aka Gyökeres for an example, and then Ruben Amorim was able to be champion twice or one and a half because then he left in the middle of the season. And instead, Porto is punishing their manager for a better result than Ruben Amorim. It's true that Porto and Sporting had different realities. Porto was way more used to win or be close to winning, and Sporting, like, they weren't champions since 2021 or 2000, so before their first title with Ruben Amorim, they weren't champions for a very long time, so the expectations and the pressure were very different from the ones at Porto. correct? But at the same time, I think Porto players, Porto fans, the Porto's direction, and even ex-players from Porto, they're not being realistic. I think they're being a bit delulu because they'd be like, "Oh, we just need to work harder. We just need to continue to be Porto, and we'll be back on winning ways. We just need some time, and Porto will be back at being Porto." No, 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 no. It doesn't work like that. Because if it worked like that, Sporting wouldn't spend 20 years trying to go back at being a Portuguese giant, right? So what Porto needs, it's not time. They don't need to just keep being Porto. They need to change. And they did change, but I think they changed poorly. They gave half a season to Vitor Bruno, and I completely agree with his removal because you lost a locker room. Players can't respect you. Players can trust you. That project is done. He got his head got too big because he was having some good results. Vitor Bruno, he was almost getting into first, then lost some games, but then he started not managing well the people in the locker room. But Anselmi, I think he has a better connection with the players and he has better plans, right? You can see that he knows about tactic. He wants to bring something different to Porto, and that's exactly what Ruben Amorim did with Sporting. That's bro. Sporting was not even considered a giant anymore, only because of historical reasons. And then Ruben Amorim comes in with his system, three central backs, bringing the right players for his system, and then Sporting can beat Benfica and Porto because Sporting was different, because Sporting was doing its own thing. Meanwhile, Porto is punishing Anselmi for trying to bring his own system, and I can't stop saying this. Sporting allowed, quote unquote, and supported Amorim after Amorim got fourth, right? That's, I think, a key point that Porto is missing. Oh, we want to be Porto. We want to be back on winning ways. Oh, but it's a tough season. We're changing. Yeah, and you have to change. You can't stop in the middle of the process. You can't punish that change. And I think Porto is doing just that. They're not giving time to create something new. They're not giving time to create their own identity, to be this new Porto. And if they keep doing this, it will just happen the same that happened with Sporting. It will be 20 years of not winning. Okay, maybe not 20. 20 years is a lot, but it will be a long time before they are back on winning ways because I don't think it's a new coach that will change everything. Bro, Pep Guardiola could go to Porto, he wouldn't make Porto champion because there are not enough good players and good mentalities at the club. For an example, Samu Omorodion, amazing striker, great in football manager as well, really powerful, but his head got lost. He started the season amazingly, scoring goals after goals, bangers. And then, if you go watch the Club World Cup, and we were doing some watch alongs here on the channel, and I noticed myself that his head wasn't in the game. His temperament wasn't correct. And then against Al-Ahly, he missed two very clear chances because his head is not really on the game. He's not really here. His composure, if we were playing FM, would go down, right? And Pep Guardiola comes in. Imagine Pep Guardiola comes to Porto. Yeah, imagine that. And he loses Galeno, he loses Nico Gonzalez, and that's it. No reinforcements, no big names, nothing. You have to do what you do with Zé Pedro in the goal, which is not bad, but it's not great as well. Marcano, 38-year-old, coming back from a big injury. You know what I'm saying? Yes, you have Rodrigo Moura, but your midfield, Fábio Vieira, that is now leaving back to Arsenal, Eustáquio, André Franco, Alan Varela, which is quite decent, but how can a manager get good results? Because when we talk about Porto and good results, we talk about being the champion of Portugal. We're talking about going to the quarterfinals of the Champions League. That's why Porto and Benfica were in the Club World Cup, because they went far in Champions League, right? We're talking about this type of results. We're not talking about fourth place, third place. So even if Pep Guardiola came to Porto, with the tools that Porto has right now, he wouldn't make second place. It's not about the manager. It's about the players and the mentality, because many times we here in Portugal see interviews of export players or export managers, and they be like, oh, we are Porto, or they are Porto, they will be back on winning ways soon. Things don't work like that. It's not just we are Porto, it's a process, and I think Porto is not respecting that process. And I think the key image really is to take a look at Sporting and do what they did with Amorim. with Amorim. I mean, because if a new manager comes in and Porto doesn't give them the right tools, they will not succeed. But now, if they give the right tools to the new manager, why didn't they give them to the old manager? Or why don't they wait? Maybe they have a better financial situation right now, so they wait. They give the new tools to the old manager, Anselmi, and then they see if it's a manager problem right now. Because at the moment we can really see if it's a manager problem because the manager don't have the right tools, for us to evaluate. Yes, Anselmi sometimes doesn't know if he should play with three central backs or two central backs. Sometimes he doesn't really know where to play Fabio Vieira. That's because he doesn't have good central backs. So he doesn't know how far he can go. And then also, for example, Thiago Jaló was on a loan from Juve and was playing well, and Otavio was playing kind of good, but then there were some problems with parties and players being bad influence in the locker room. So Anselmi had to go through that as well, right? And Fabio Vieira is like the only good midfielder that Porto has, so you have to make sure that not only Fabio Vieira is playing well, but he's also potentializing the rest of the midfield. So, it's not like I have a good midfield and now we ball. No, it's like I have one good midfielder and I have to make him good and the rest of the midfield good as well with him. So it's really complicated, the role of Martin Anselmi. I think it's very unfair to let him go 5 months after not giving him the right tools, and I'm afraid that Porto will now be the next Sporting if they don't change. If they don't allow the process of change to come through, if they don't get the right investments done in players, they will be screwed. And it's not a new manager that will solve that. You know what I'm saying? And I recognize that Anselmi, I like Anselmi, I'm biased here, but I know he's not the best manager in the world. I know he didn't do the best choices, but we must give him time because he's trying to build a sandcastle with cards. You know what I'm saying? So we gotta give him time to figure things out. And I think 5 months, especially when you start in the middle of the season, it's not enough. And remember, Anselmi got a draw at Sporting, the champions of Portugal, and he played really well. Sporting was against the ropes and they only scored after the 90th minute. So I think there is potential in Anselmi. I think he just needs the right players. And I think Porto are committing a big mistake by letting him go without giving him the right tools. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. Leave a like and subscribe. Catch me live on Twitch, Kik, and YouTube, and I see you next time.